Hi, and welcome to another episode of the I'm a Fucking Man podcast. Serge here, and I'm very excited to have you join us today for the first episode in this series talking about mental health and especially mental health when it comes to men. I am so grateful for the chat that I have with Patrick Messenger, a very good friend of mine who I've known for many, many years and have gotten closer over the past few years, and especially in the past year. Patrick shares his vulnerability, his powerful story of dealing with mental health issues and almost suicide, and how therapy led him to reveal a lot about himself and move past those struggles, and how he still uses therapy today, but also leading into joining the NoStigmas team and now being a very important part of their team and helping create awareness, support, and guidance in mental health communities. So I know you're going to enjoy this one. Thank you for being here. And now let's get started with Patrick.
Hi, I'm Serge. I'm a husband, a father, a technical sales rep, and I'm also the founder and project developer of the IAFM League, a personal development league for men. And one of my missions is to give men the chance to have fun and challenge themselves while building consistency and growth in their lives. And this is my podcast. Here I'll speak with everyday men, just like you and me, to discuss their struggles, their successes, their passions, and desires to becoming the best version of themselves. So thanks for joining and welcome to the IAFM podcast.
All right, welcome, Patrick. Thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me once again back on the IAFM podcast. Thank you, Patrick Messenger. How are you, my friend?
Absolutely, Serge. Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well today. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is a series that I wanted to do with men talking about mental health, which is something that we don't see enough of, unfortunately. And you have been an amazing captain, team leader when it comes to NoStigmas and the training and preparation for the run in Chicago that I'm looking forward to participating in. So I'm so happy that you're here to share your story. We've heard a bit of your story before, and some of it tying into mental health, but I'm glad you're going to take some more time to express, kind of dig deeper into that. So I want to go over kind of what when you started realizing that, wait a minute, maybe I need help or guidance. Maybe I'm things aren't all that great. Leading into finding that support, what that process was like, and now somebody who's a spokesperson for a charity, an organization that helps, supports, and guides people when it comes to mental health. You've expressed in the previous episode that we've had about um, substance abuse and going through that and that experience, and then, focusing on your health, both physically, mentally, and running, and what that has led to. Now with NoStigmas, can you kind of give us, for anybody who hasn't seen that episode, or just kind of a recap, how did this start for you to go, wait a minute, something's not right. Something is not right.
So it's there's the answer that I came to realize in my adult life, and then there's the answer that I will also offer that I have since reflected upon and gone back and dug a little deeper to really, you know, do some extra self-discovery to learn more about myself. So the adulthood answer is I never chose to focus on my mental health. I kind of happened into the opportunity of being allowed to focus on my mental health.
Okay.
And it really started with when Katie and I started having, marital issues. She just presented me with the simple question, would you be willing to go to marriage counseling? I said yes. Um, you know, I would have assumed I would have fought at that point in my life. But ultimately, I knew that there were issues, and Katie was and still is a person that I cared about then. I still care about
Mm-hmm.
now. And marriage counseling, it just made sense. And, through marriage counseling, I think I was able to see a little bit of an upside in terms of therapy,
Okay.
not just for spouses, but for myself. And through that journey that Katie and I took together with marriage counseling and just really opening up and conversating with one another, um, I don't know how far into it was, but I can just remember laying in bed one night and explaining to her that I hated myself, um, and that I had a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment for many of the decisions that I had made previously in my life. Some of those, in regard directly to Katie and our relationship, and some of them had nothing to do. They were, predecessing, things that I had struggled with, and so. Um, Even in that time of struggle, Katie encouraged me to find a therapist. And so I reached out to one of the contacts that I had made through dog training and rescue and rehabilitation. And I knew that Amy had been recently, at that point in time, we're in 2017 at this point, but I knew that she had just recently graduated and had just started her mental health counseling practice. And so I reached out to Amy and I said, listen, I know we have, a little bit of a, not a relationship, but we knew each other outside of this therapy counseling world. But like, I always enjoyed conversating with you and I found it easy to open up with you. So if it's if it's okay, I would really love if you were able to be my therapist. And so I've been with her since 2017. And I still go to therapy for the last 2 years. I've been about once a month. And just because of some of the transition and change and whatnot in my life, or currently, I'm going back to once every other week, just as more of a proactive preventative measure, to just make sure that it's not all just in my head and think that I'm doing okay or not or whatever, but I actually have a sounding board that is a very neutral party in Amy and talking with her. So that would be the adult answer. Through 7 years of therapy and self-reflection and journaling and meditation and all of the things that I have come to really value, really my struggles with mental health, depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation and even an attempt actually started in high school. And so it would have started somewhere around my ninth or 10th grade in terms of depression and anxiety. And it was my junior year in high school where I actually did attempt suicide. Um, Back then, I can't say it was easy to just shrug it off because it was absolutely incredibly difficult to work through. Um, but to make it as succinct as possible, the night that I attempted suicide, there was a girl at a neighboring high school that we shared many local, friends and contacts and stuff like that. Kelsey actually died by suicide the same night that I attempted it. And so in that moment, in those coming months, it was so much easier for me to focus on Kelsey and not focus on my own issues or focus on drugs and alcohol that significantly spiked after that attempt and really became the prevalent force in my life for 5 or 6 years after that. um
Yeah.
and so you put those two pieces of the puzzle together, and in the present day, I feel very fortunate not just to be here still, but to be living the life that I'm living at this point.
Thank you. I remember reading in your blog that story, which is very powerful. And it's, I've got two kids, they're 10 and 7, and we never think, we think like, oh, they've got it easy, you know, but at 7 years old, they have these thoughts, they have these, they do have stresses, anxieties, and you know, the, I don't remember as a child necessarily experiencing that, or anything that I did experience, I didn't think was important enough.
Mhm.
And as a teenager as well, any insecurities I had, I didn't want to share with anybody, because I felt ashamed, or I felt, I was just like, oh, this is just who I am. I'm quiet, or I'm reserved, or I lacked confidence. So it's wild now, me being a parent and you sharing that story, which is extremely powerful. For the fact that you realizing, wait a minute, this is about somebody else, that this focus needs to go to, or should go to. Um, and then now looking back and going, okay, and you might not reflect on it, but I see you as somebody who's doing so much positive stuff in the world and having such a positive impact. And I'm going to ask you this question later in the chat. What is something you would have said to the Patrick back then? But it's powerful because we don't think of it when we're in that moment. We're not thinking of that at all. I read somewhere recently on the topic of suicide that it's not that people want to necessarily end their life; they just want to get out of the situation that they're in. Was that something that uh, is what you had experienced at that time in your life?
Absolutely. I think it was, for me, it was two-parted. It was very much uh, about a girl, about that first love and loss and
Mhm.
heartbreak. Um, and so there was a big portion of that 16, 17-year-old kid in me that was just so incredibly hurt that it felt like if I were to take that step and take my own life, I wouldn't actually be hurting anymore. I would actually be alleviating pain. And then there's the selfish side of me that said, oh, well, she did this to me, so I'm going to do this to her. Right. And
Yeah.
while that is a wildly inappropriate thought, um, it happened. It was a thought that, like, I didn't set out to think that thought, but that was the thought
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's you know, uh, uh, gr- you were 16, 17 years old, and in those moments when we're teenagers, we think we know a lot more than we actually do.
absolutely.
And so, I think there are many, 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 well, the stats show how many people, how many teenagers have taken their lives. And it's and one of the reasons why I'm happy you're sharing this, and I want to do this series, is because this is not something that was talked about when we were that age. I don't remember anything about mental health, hearing about that um, as a student. Even in my 20s, I would say it's probably been maybe a decade or so that I've really heard more about it. And I think social media is helping with that. Um, but I don't remember as a child being, we had a guidance counselor at school, in high school. I, you know, I, even if I was going through something, I don't know if I would have felt comfortable going to the guidance counselor. I forget, Mr. Francis, I think was his name, to talk about something that I was experiencing. So, um, let's talk about uh, the therapy. And so, you start going to therapy. was there a moment of, okay, I think I figured this out, or has it always been like new discoveries? Can you share a bit more about kind of that process? I mean, it's 7 years, so I know there's a lot. Um,
Well, it, as you say, is just such a broad term. I don't think there is any figuring it
yeah,
out
yeah,
because life is constantly changing and evolving, and we have to evolve and adapt and change with it, right?
yeah,
And so, while those first couple of years of therapy were very much about um, emotional coping, about reflecting on past experiences from childhood into the adolescent ages into adulthood, and the first career path, and first, I would say, not real relationships, but first meaningful lasting relationships, the ones that I was just like, oh wait, I really do care about this, right? It's not just an image or a thought or whatever it would have been, in my high school years.
right,
Um, so the first couple of years there was a lot of heavy lifting. I think I met with Amy almost every week, for from probably middle of 2017 through, I don't know, I mean, probably almost into COVID, before I
yeah,
backed off. Um, and somewhere probably in 2019, I just made a conscious decision to say, hey, like, even if I'm not struggling, it does not mean I don't need therapy. So, even once Amy and I backed off from the once a week, I think we went to, once every 2 weeks, and then somewhere around COVID, we made the decision that, everything is doing well enough that let's back off and just go once a month.
okay,
Um, and that was really helpful. And during that time, I was still doing a ton of work on the daily in terms of my own mental wellness.
right,
But like, just like life happens, um, and I assume all therapists are of the same opinion here. You know, if I know therapy is helpful, and I also know I have lots of changes coming in life, my opinion is, like, I would be silly not to increase my therapy visits during those changes. It doesn't mean something bad is going to happen. It doesn't mean that, like, I'm going to have difficulty or face big challenges or whatever, but it just kind of gives me a sounding board to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, like, let's walk through these potential scenarios on what it's going to look like when I'm working from home full time again for the first time in 4 or 5 years. When I'm doing these, once a month or once every other month trips to this big massive city that's filled with human beings, just wall to wall, right? Like, and how is that going to affect my relationship with Ashley? How many soccer games am I going to miss with Truman? There's just this long list of things that I have found is just really incredibly helpful to just have. Again, it's got to be a neutral party, because a lot of times the partner isn't going to give you the hard truth that the therapy might, right? Or my mother, I love her to death, but she will almost always agree with me because she has that, like, connectivity with
yeah,
me, since birth, and that's a beautiful thing, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But if I need a hard truth, Amy is the person that I go to.
yeah. I mean, wow,
um,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's how did you said that you and Amy made decisions that, okay, we're going to go from week to 2 weeks to once a month. Was there anywhere in that process where you felt either scared because of that or encouraged because of that? Now that the safety net is going away, I know
Yeah.
she's always there, but was there a thought of, oh, wait a minute, am I capable of getting there?
For me, I was always more encouraged, I think, because it did, uh, almost like a test grade or something. It was
Yeah,
just like, if I can go from once weekly to once every other week, or, to once monthly or whatever, that I'd made a lot of progress,
cool.
right? But simultaneously, like, just because I'm going back to once every other week, it doesn't mean that I'm regressing.
Mm-hmm.
right? It just means that I'm taking care of myself because I know there's a lot of change happening and a lot of change to come. Um, and I think that would be my encouragement for other people because everybody's experience is going to be different. And if you need 3 therapy sessions a week for the rest of your life, so be it. If that's what it takes for you to live the best life that you can, or even if that's what it takes to just barely be able to make it by, so be it. Do it. That's wonderful, right? Um, and then the other thing, and again, I can't speak on behalf of other therapists, but even if I'm just meeting with Amy once a month, like I'm texting her little things that might come up. Hey, I experienced anger at work today because of XYZ. Hey, Ashley and I had this argument last night because of XYZ. What do you think of this? Should we meet? Should we have an impromptu, session if you have it, available in your schedule? And so just because we're not having those hour-long sessions on whatever the regular basis was, it doesn't mean that I can't still reach out and ask for help and assistance when I feel like, hey, I might need some
Yeah.
assistance here.
Cool. No, that's I think that's important. Something you're touching on that we again are not taught. To me it sounds like just this preventative aspect of we in general uh, an emergency happens and then we react to the
Mhm.
emergency, but we're not often trained
Yep.
to deal with that situation, which whether it's like you said, whether it's an argument with our partner, whether it's something with our children, something at work, we're things can come up to us, and whether based on our upbringing, uh, our what we've learned, the communities we've grown in, certain values we've been taught versus values that we learned on our own,
Mhm.
impacts the way we're going to think about something, feel about something, and ultimately react. So I think that's awesome that you're sharing the idea of this preventative form of preparation of I know this is coming up. In the past, when something similar to this has happened, this is how I worked through it, or this was my experience. So to make sure that either doesn't happen or that I'm reminded of how did that make me feel, I think is powerful. And it's not something, I'm glad you're sharing this because it's not something that we're taught. This is honestly the first time that I'm introduced to this idea.
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people, I was in a bookstore the other day and with my wife, and I was looking for the self-help section because I
Mhm.
was curious if it was still called that, and it was called wellness. But
Okay.
I
Yep.
remember maybe 20 years ago, there was that section, that, a
Mhm.
little section in the bookstore called self-help, which at the time I was like, oh, that's not for me because I don't need help. And now I love personal development books, personal growth books, wellness books, self-help books, because I know that I will benefit from it. But it was not and this is what I want to tie in with therapy, the idea that people have of therapy is something is wrong. I go see somebody, I lie on the couch, they take notes, they listen, and they diagnose something or they try to help me with it. So there's almost, you were talking about shame earlier, something that you felt with Katie. Um, and I think that prevents a lot of people from going to therapy because they might feel like I'm too ashamed to share this even with a complete stranger. Um, and so what you're sharing about, it can also be a form of preparing for a situation or an event or whatever it may be, a lifestyle change. I think is very powerful, and it's not something that we are introduced to. So I'm glad you touched on that because we don't hear enough about it. Um,
Yeah. Well, and you and I have talked extensively throughout the last several years, just about preventative maintenance for
Hmm.
fitness, right?
Yeah.
Or for diet, or like the platform that you use with IAFM,
Yeah.
and financial, and like romantic and relationship health, right?
Yeah.
Mental health, it should be done that same way, right? Um, the insurance company is always going to be there for the emergency situation, but a lot of times we can avoid those emergency situations in any of those subject matters,
Hmm.
right? If we're focused more on proactive preventative measures
Yeah.
that, encourage healthier living or thinking, or physical activity, or whatever it may be. And so, whether it's therapy or something else that, anyone can, if it's making a positive impact in your life, do it on the regular, right? Don't wait to do that thing and hope that it comes to the rescue.
Yeah.
Do it consistently. Make it a practice. And if
Yeah.
it's, once a week, or every day, or whatever it is, make it a consistent practice.
Yeah. I think that's important because, um, like you mentioned, in different, whether it's your health, your financial wealth situation, your relationships, I think for a lot of people, once they've solved the issue, for a lot of people, then they stop they stop that practice because they think, well, I don't have the problem anymore.
Right.
Like I've resolved the problem's gone, so I'm good. Um, and then that can last for a little bit, but most often it will come back some way. Now you've experienced it before, so you're better at handling it. But as you mentioned, the preventative maintenance, it's a habit, whether it's a habit or just consistency of it, um, will just help avoid the major emergencies or uh-ohs or blow-ups that you've experienced in the past. So that's important I'm glad you're bringing that up as well. Um, Now I want to touch on, you're wearing that awesome shirt. I run with NoStigmas. So you've shared your story of being introduced to therapy and the positive impact that's had on you, and still keeping up with it. How was it that you were introduced to NoStigmas, and now you're a leader in that company? I experienced it firsthand with you as our team captain for our marathon training. But how did it lead into that, and you growing that relationship with them and getting to the point of going full time with them, which is amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, so in 2022, Ashley ran the Chicago Marathon. As you know, I lived in Chicago many, many years ago. And so I did not run in 2022, but what I did is I went in attendance with Ashley and our friend Donald, and I ran in between the course markings, and as many, like as many different areas as I could, and met up with Ashley and Don to take pictures and just cheer them on, and give them some love as they were out there doing the thing. Um, I had never experienced Chicago, and like when I lived there, I came to love the city of Chicago. Um, it has similarities of New York City, but it also has, like some chiller, more relaxed vibes that you can find as well.
Okay.
Um, and so running had become such an important part of my life that when I went back as a runner and ran around a million spectators and 50,000 runners or whatever it was, I was just, I mean, I was so enthused. I was so invigorated and energized after the race that I just said, like to Ashley, probably within the week, I said, I know I've always said I was never going to do a road marathon, like an official road
Mhm.
marathon. However, I think I'm going to run, I think I might want to run the Chicago Marathon next year. Um, Almost immediately, though, I didn't really have any interest in running a qualifying time. I don't particularly care to run that hard that often. I like to go low and slow and just be out there for a long time. That's my jam. So qualifying was never super important to me, like it is with some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I also I don't know why, but I chose to just forgo the general lottery that Chicago has, where you can just get selected by name out of the hat kind of style. And I just said, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it in a way that is important to me and helpful to others. And so I searched for probably 2 or 3, 4 weeks, charity after charity after charity. I don't know how many charity partners there are at this point, but it's hundreds,
Okay.
right? And anytime I saw something that was, a little bit interesting on the surface, I would click and go to the website and just, scour it. And after a couple of weeks, I had it down to 2 organizations. It was down to NoStigmas and the Worldwide Animal Federation, I think is what it was called. But basically, a worldwide animal advocacy organization. And as you know, those two things, no stigmas in mental health and animal advocacy and veganism, those are
Yeah.
very important things to me.
Yeah.
And the more that I pinged over onto the NoStigmas page, the more I aligned with it because it's a small grassroots organization that is really trying to empower people, empowering people versus this big conglomerate organization that is, probably hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. And so it just connected with me a little bit more. And I said, this is the organization I'm going to do it with. Um, and so I signed up and started my blog website. And from January through the marathon in October of 2023, I kind of found my voice within mental health in similar ways that I found my voice with veganism and running and physical health. Speaking out against substance abuse and alcohol abuse and stuff like that I had done previously.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2023, the marathon was, I want to say, October 9th or so. And somewhere within 2 or 3 weeks of the marathon, I'd already hit my fundraising goal and then some. And I don't know, I started thinking, can I do more with this organization? And there were probably 3 or 4 times where I typed out half long emails or sorry, half finished emails to Jake and then hit delete, 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 delete,
Oh,
delete.
really?
I don't have this, that, or the other, right? He's not even going to look at this. And so on that third or fourth time, when I finally finished the email and essentially I just reached out and said, listen, like this has been my experience. It's been a very positive one for me personally. I've had so many great conversations with family, friends, and strangers alike, not just about my journey, not just about mental health, but other people opening up and sharing little bits and pieces their experience with mental health and running and their lifelong journey and whatnot. And basically, if there's anything that can be done from a virtual work from home situation for NoStigmas, I would love to hear about it. And he responded within a day or two and just said, I have some ideas. Let's schedule a time to have a conference call and we'll talk it out and see if we think it's a good fit. So I ended up meeting with Jake during the marathon, and like we met up before the race at the expo. We had dinner together the night before the race, and everything just felt good. It was always just a very positive, pleasant experience, no pressure kind of situation,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it felt positive and it felt healthy. And so within I don't know, a couple of weeks after the marathon, all of the we came back down to real life and like we were back in Louisville and we're back focused on just normal everyday to day living. Jake and I had another couple of conversations and he basically just said, listen, like this is where we want to go with the marathon team. I can't promise you lots of hours initially and whatnot, but we do need a marathon director. And if that's something that you would be interested in, I think you would be a really good candidate for this. And so at that point, my mind was a little blown because I was thinking like I was going to be doing, like work from home administrative duties and, just typing a bunch of names into emails and,
Right.
all of this office type duty, right? And here he is like approaching me with like, yeah, that's part of the role, but you're still going to be in a very running centric position. You're going to be leading the team if you choose to,
Yeah.
to accept this position. So, talking with Ashley, and then talking with the running store and everything, it was just like this is an opportunity that I feel like it was made for me.
Amazing.
Fast forwarding to now, our team of 40 runners this year is 25 larger than it was last year. Last year we raised just shy, I think it was just shy of $28,000. And this year we are currently at about 48.5.
Amazing.
Our team goal is 70,000. So we've still got a little ways to go, but September and October roll around and everybody's running and training and advocating. And I have no doubt that we're gonna make it
Yeah.
to that goal.
Yeah.
And to this point, like I shared with you a little bit earlier, is I'm actually just about to start going full time with No Stigmas, which is just another
Yeah.
thing that I just consider myself very blessed and grateful for. And so it will end up growing into a little bit more than just being the captain of the marathon team. That's definitely something that will still occur. But one of the things that we want to do is roll out this idea of team no stigmas, which is about moving the body and moving the mind, right? So move the body for physical wellness and increase your mental wellness simultaneously. And so whether it's picking up other marathons or little local 5K, 10Ks. We've got a three-person team out in Boise that they're in the process right now of organizing their first mental health 5K as a team. And I
Oh,
think they've already 40 registered runners, and the race has been live for maybe, I don't even think 2 full weeks yet, so about 10 days. And so that'll be on September 28th. But so Team No Stigmas is going to be known for just doing active things, peer support efforts, advocating for mental wellness, suicide prevention awareness, and tips and stuff like that. And then I will also be able to kind of grow a little bit more into the more traditional No Stigmas platform and organization, which is education for people, for workplace for workplaces that choose to have us come in and do our workplace wellness workshop. Um, so there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot more that we want to do. And fortunately, we're at a period of growth right now where not just for me, but I think for No Stigmas and for the world of mental health, we're
mhm.
going to be able to do. It's going to do a lot of good for a ton of people.
Yeah. Well, that is all incredible news. Thank you for sharing that. I was telling you this before. Uh, that's something my experience. I didn't think when I started training to run a marathon just a few months ago, really, let's say, 3-ish, 4-ish months. Um, to me, it was all about, okay, I have to prepare to run this race. Yes, I do want to raise money and awareness for this cause. Um, but especially in the past few weeks, because as a team, we're seeing it more. We're seeing people share their story, share their why, posting um, on social media. It has given me a greater purpose of sharing the fact that this is something that isn't talked about. This isn't something that we see enough of, and that's why it is important. And that's one of my whys of raising awareness and money for No Stigmas in this marathon training is it's not something that we hear enough about. My kids, I don't know if at their school it's something that they're taught. They're in elementary school, but I don't know if it's something that they're presented with. They learn about bullying and things like that. But I don't know if I were to ask my 10-year-old, hey, what do you know about mental health? I don't know what he could answer. And I think that's something that, uh, things that you guys have been doing. And like you said, there's a lot of potential for growth. There is a ton of potential for growth. And how I connect with physical activity. So I love the idea of the moving, because it's true. I was thinking about this earlier today before our talk. What I love about physical activity when it connects to mental health is that when you're running, when you're swimming, when you're lifting weights, when you're doing a push up or whatever, and you're not thinking about the crap that's going on that you're experiencing. You're going, you're concerned about the crap that you're going through physically, and that moment of like, this is heavy, or can I make it that extra mile, or am I able to pull this, push this, lift this, do this? And it is so therapeutic, and it can even be forms. I mean, I find when running, it's a form of meditation because I can either
Absolutely.
disconnect or I do think about things, but then they come and go. They come and go because then I'll be like, oh, I have another 3 kilometers to go, or okay, I have to turn around now, or whatever it may be. So I think it's very powerful what No Stigmas is doing, and having you part of their team is. I'm very excited for you, and I'm very excited for their organization, because I know you bring a lot to the table. And especially, I think it's amazing that within a year to for them to see what you have done, what you're doing. It's well deserving what you've received. So congrats. And I look forward to, just within a year, a lot has happened. So I look forward to seeing what's going to happen in the next year, 2, 5, 8, 10, and so on. So and you're great at sharing, whether it's through your blog or sharing on social media. You're a very uh, open book, and you've shown expressed vulnerabilities, which is extremely powerful. Again, something that we don't see from men. um, Touching on that, is that your experience through, we'll kind of go back a little bit. Was there a point where you didn't feel comfortable sharing vulnerabilities because you are a man? Or was it just like, this is therapeutic, I'm going to share it regardless?
Well, I don't know that I ever really had that thought of, I don't share because of my gender.
Yeah,
Um, I know that growing up, there was a lot of that, right? My dad, my grandpa, their dads, I'm sure, like it's you withhold it, you bury it deep down, and you don't ever think or talk or do anything with that ever again, right?
yeah,
For me, it was, it was a progression within therapy where, it was, I think, probably 2 to 2.5 years of Amy encouraging me to journal and journal and journal. And then, somewhere in 2019 or 2020, I finally picked up a journal at the bookstore and started writing every day. And I was amazed at how much shit came out. Like I went through a full journal and a half from January 1st of 2020 through somewhere in May.
yeah,
And then like it was, I think for me, I had to get the shit out um, to a more than neutral source, being my journal, before I could entertain the idea of finding my voice in a public setting. Um, and again, just like Amy has been my sounding board, my journal and my pen that has been the most non-judgmental, regular sounding board in almost every single day of my life for 5 years or
yeah.
so. And so once I start writing, and writing has always been a really important thing to me. I've always enjoyed doing it, whether that was, writing short stories or poems and songs back in high school and college, or when I got into theater and started writing scripts in college and after and stuff like that. Like I've always loved to write. And I lost that for a long time. I lost writing, period.
Yeah.
But I lost the love, the enjoyment of writing for a long time. And even though I fought Amy for a couple of years before actually picking up that pen and doing some journaling, once I did, it wasn't just I was able to, kind of soothe my soul and work through lots of different, good things, bad things, in between things that had happened, over the course of 30 years or so of my life. But I was able to find my voice in doing that as well. And then, I mean, it was essentially, I would just, I might do a journal inscription one day and say, hey, that's not just powerful for me. That could be powerful for someone else. So maybe I'll share this one, right? And so I'll I'll literally sit either with my phone in hand or with my computer in front of me, and I will just, I will take whatever was, handwritten in my journal and type it out on my keyboard or whatever,
Yeah.
and then share it on Facebook or Instagram or my blog or whatever. Um, and that's just been, again, in very similar, I think, to what you're saying is it was very unexpected for me to sign up to run the marathon, focused on the marathon in the city of Chicago, which I loved, and get 6 or 8 months into training for the marathon and being like, oh, well, it's cool that I get to run in Chicago, but I'm really having just like a fucking awesome time sharing my life and sharing my story and listening to
Yeah.
others as they share back with me. And I think that was really the biggest alignment for my realization and my experience as a runner with No Stigmas and advocating for mental health, and what the mission of No Stigmas is. Essentially, like, the more you share, the better you feel.
Mm-hmm.
That vulnerability then is transferred over to someone else, and you may know the person that needs to hear that, you may not, but
Yeah.
that person hears it, reads it, feels it, whether they share back with you or not. Again, that's their choice, and any choice they make is totally fine. But
Yeah.
once they feel that, they then become a little bit more inclined to owning up to living their best life, or being more vulnerable with some of the things that they may have struggled with, or maybe sharing some tips and insights and things that have been very positively powerful in their everyday practices. And so it becomes this very, very, this really beautiful circle of, hey, like, I'm going to share this with Serge, and Serge is going to share it with them, and that person's going to share it with this person. And it just becomes full circle. And once we get in that circle, man, everybody ends up feeling a little bit better than they did before they were on the inside of the
Yeah.
circle.
No,
And
that's
that's the network we want to build. That's the circle that we want to increase, the size of, immensely.
yeah. No, that's definitely been my experience, and I'm grateful, extremely grateful for it. And it's made me reflect on, okay, well, once this race is done, how do I do more of this? How do I, as we talked a little bit earlier about, there's just not enough of it, and the bit of it that we do see, um, it can be easily forgotten because we have so much stuff going on. So if it is seeing a post, oh, that's nice, and then scroll and on to the next thing. But once we see it consistently, and sharing your story, and that's been an enjoyable part of my process as well, is sharing my story as well, or parts of my story, and going, this is therapeutic. Other people, you're so right, other people go through similar things. It might not be the exact same thing, but once they see that, oh, somebody else is doing this, or has gone through this, or has experienced this, then it's okay that I am.
Mhm.
And now there's an outlet that I'm aware of that maybe I wasn't aware of before, and that's so important. It's crucial, because there are a ton of amazing charities that exist for many, many, many different causes.
Yep.
But one thing I love about No Stigmas is that everybody, everyone from age baby to 2 to 92 has experienced some form of mental health.
Yep.
Everyone, everyone. Um, so that's why I think this is so powerful. What you're doing and your journey. I was talking to somebody this morning about our life journeys are this. It's never a straight path. If 3 years ago I would have said, "Oh, this is what you're going to be doing," you might have been like, "No, really?" Or 5 years ago, when you were running the dog training, I think you're like, "Hey, this is what you'll be doing. This is what you'll be doing." You'll be like, "I don't know. Would I? Will I? Maybe." But I think it's what's powerful is that and I think it's probably, I'm looking forward to speaking with Jake and other people, especially when we meet everybody in Chicago, part of the team. I think that people get involved in causes like this because they have a tie to it. It's not just, okay, well, this seems cool, and there's an emotional, an emotional, mental tie to it, and that
Absolutely.
purpose becomes a lot stronger and more important. And I think that's what's probably the coolest thing about this whole, you're talking about the circle. It just grows and grows and grows. So again, thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. It's phenomenal. Um, so,
Definitely.
I mentioned this earlier at the beginning. Um, if you could go back to that Patrick at 16, 17 years old, or even 25 years old, or um, what would you tell him? What would you say um, to him?
Um, I guess I don't really know exactly. Um, I would, if I knew everything that I now know, I would say it's okay, hang in there. Everything's going to be all right.
Hmm.
Um, and it's probably not all that different than what my mom would have said, that next morning when I walked down the stairs and told her of the night prior.
Right.
Um, back then, and you shared, even about, your kiddos and what do they know about mental health, right? I didn't know about mental health. My mom didn't know about mental health. Her first advice was, hey, I know it's been, a year or two since you've been to church, but maybe go talk to Pastor Chuck. And, he was always a very positive influence in my life, in middle school and early high school. And so, and that's what I did. I listened to
Mhm.
mom and I did that. And um, I know it was helpful. It wasn't helpful enough to remove the hurt, the pain,
Right.
but it was helpful. And
Mhm.
so I think that, you know, if the adolescent mind has a calm response from an adult that is important to them, that they value, no matter how much they might dislike that human being in that
Yeah.
moment. If they have a calm response from someone that really cares about them, I really believe that every person is at least going to have those words. They're going to think about whatever words that other person shared with them,
Yeah.
and that was very much the case with me. Um, and then the other thing that I was gonna kind of mention was in regards to kiddos. The other thing that one of the workshops that we have is our Youth Matters workshop. So that is something that for anyone that is interested, that is something that like No Stigmas has taught many, many times before, and we will teach many, many times again in the future. It is something that even if you, for example, were to go through our ally training online,
Mhm.
we could then teach you how to teach the Youth Matters workshop, not just to your kids, but like if you want to go into any sort of
Oh, yeah.
school or developmental center or anything like that, like that's the kind of thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
because it's great that Serge and Patrick, at the age of, are you 40 yet? Or are you nearing 40?
42.
42. All right. So at almost 40, I've got one more year left. And 42, it's great that we can have these conversations, but wouldn't it be better if our 10-year-olds grew up with the knowledge
Yeah.
that took us 30 or 35 or 40 years to
Yeah.
acquire?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it's going to avoid all negative situations forever, but it does set the 10-year-old up to be hopefully a slightly more healthy, mentally healthy 12 and 15-year-old, 18-year-old, 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And hopefully then they can get to, a more mentally mature and well, period of their life a lot sooner than what I know I did.
Exactly. No, that's and thank you for sharing that. I know that's something I want to get into with Jake about all the because No Stigmas offers so many different resources. So, and I think that's you're touching on something that's extremely important. It starts with them, and that's something I look at with my children. And that's something that my wife and I will often say to them. We're like, we are doing this now. You might not like it, but we want you to be ahead of where we were, you know, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
we want you to be a better version that because we didn't, we didn't have the tools. Our parents didn't have the tools, and it's not their fault. My
Absolutely.
grandparents, they had different tools. And it's not their fault. It really isn't. Now we're just being introduced to different tools that can offer different solutions. And it's like, oh, this is quite important, and
Yep.
it's powerful. So I look forward, and that's one of the things I personally look forward to learning more about NoStigmas, representing them, being more of a spokesperson for them, and being more for mental health as well. So um, I want to thank you so much. You shared, I knew this was going to be amazing. And you've shared some very powerful points and vulnerable moments, which I appreciate you doing because I know it might not be easy or but I appreciate it. People need to see this, and they need to see men just doing what you just did, talking about experiences, moments that, that's something that, I'll go back to the idea of shame. That's something that I've learned. Shame and guilt is something that men we hold on to, and we want to seem strong and um, not be affected by things that happen in our lives. And shame and guilt is something that holds us back. It just does.
Absolutely.
And to be aware of it and to express and to communicate, in my opinion, is not a sign of, I used to think it was a sign of weakness, that I've learned it's a sign of strength because the weakness was a fear. And
Yep.
that's what's ironic is somebody who's afraid to share something or express something or communicate, it's because they're afraid, and that's a greater sign of weakness of bottling it up and ultimately affecting your mental well-being, affecting your relationships, affecting your physical health, which down the road it might not do anything at the moment, but down the road it does not help anybody, especially those you love. So, um, again, thank you so much for what you're doing. Again, I'm so excited for you. I'm excited to see you in a little bit. Thank you for your guidance so far, and I appreciate it. I love you, buddy, and uh, I'm yeah, I keep saying it, but I'm very excited for what's to come for you, you and Ashley, your family, and the team of No Stigmas. So, and anybody that's going to have the opportunity to either work with you, collaborate with you, just be introduced to you, I think they're very lucky. So thank you again for being part of this this series on talking about mental health, especially with men. So thank you. All the best. I'll share in the comments how to contact, well, your Instagram, Facebook, and also I'll share NoStigmas. So if anybody out there that wants to learn more about mental health, NoStigmas, what they do, what they're about, if you want to learn more about Patrick, I'll be sharing all that. So thank you. Much love, my friend. And
Thank you,
we will
Serge.
see
Thank you for the
you
kind words. And
well,
43 days. 43.
43 days, baby. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us. What a great conversation with Patrick. I'm so happy that he was able to share some of those darker moments in his life, because it's important for everybody, especially men, to hear that it's okay to share this. And it's also important and it's okay to get help, assistance, support. There's not enough of it, and that's why I want to do this series. And I'm so grateful that Patrick was able to join me today to share that with you, and also to share outlets available like NoStigmas. So I'm going to put in the comments below how to look up Patrick and also how to look up NoStigmas. If you do need help, if you are going through anything, please find a resource, an outlet in your community, online. NoStigmas is one of them, to get the help needed. Thank you so much for joining me today. Sending you positive health, wealth, love, and happiness, because you deserve it. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.